Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and today I want to share with you guys some changes that Blizzard is planning on making to Mythic Plus dungeons in patch 7.2.5. Now, after these changes were announced a few hours ago, people have been reasonably going fucking apeshit because they're completely stupid. But I do want to share them with you guys because I want you to understand what Blizzard's vision is for Mythic Plus dungeons, and after reading this post, I'm pretty sure that nobody even has one. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to this post right here in the video description below so we can read along together. This is made, 8 hours ago. Wow, okay. I've lost track of time. We've been thrilled to see how positively players have responded to Mythic Plus Keystone Dungeons since Legion's release, so we're going to nerf them. The end was just me. That wasn't actually in the post, but it might as well have been. However, there are a couple of areas in which our original design for the system hasn't quite matched up to how things have been working out in practice. In an upcoming 7.2.5 build, we're going to try out a couple of changes, it's actually like 5 or 6 by the way, to how Keystone runs work. The first big change is we're getting rid of the depletion mechanic. We'd originally imagined that getting a hold of a keystone would be more of a barrier than it is, but in reality there are so many players participating that it's generally not too difficult to find someone with a keystone that you'd like to run. In that environment, depleting a keystone is more of an annoyance than anything else, especially when it happens for reasons outside your control, such as a player disconnecting or hurting their feelings whenever you join in because they're mad that, I don't know. People leave dungeons all the time because if you leave a Mythic Plus dungeon, you're a fucking bitch. I want to say that right now. Anyway, let's go ahead and go to the rest of it. That actually was also not in the post, but it should have been. Instead, we're going to try the following. Completing the run on time will have the same results as it currently does in 7.2. You'll get a new keystone for a random dungeon that's 1 to 3 levels higher than the one that you completed based on how quickly you finished. Second change. You complete the dungeon, but you don't make the timer. You get a keystone for a random dungeon that's 1 level lower than the one you just used. So as an example, you do Court of Stars 10, and you don't make the timer, and you finish the dungeon, and then you get a dungeon that's like, it's a +9 of any other dungeon. It can also be Court of Stars, but it can be any random dungeon. However, if you don't complete the dungeon at all, you'll have a keystone for the same dungeon that's 1 lower than the one you just used. So if you do Court of Stars, and for whatever reason you don't finish it on +10, then after you leave, your keystone will downgrade back down to a +9. The reason they're making the change in that way is so people don't end up just farming the same instance over and over and over with the same key. Those are good changes. I think that kind of makes sense, and I feel like this is probably better than the depletion mechanic. Depleted keys are just, I think they're kind of stupid, personally. But I don't really have too much an opinion on it one way or another. Let's keep going. It gets better. Worse. The other thing that we're looking to change is the way that rewards are given at the end of a run. And by change, we mean reduce. By a lot. Currently, whenever you complete a run that upgrades your keystone by 2 or 3 levels, you're given a second or third chest. Not anymore. That's because when we believed the keystones would be rare, we didn't want you to miss out on any of the loot you might have collected from the runs you were skipping. I don't really understand that. I don't understand that logic at all. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but I have no idea. However, because of this, players tend to look for lower level keystones that they can easily stomp through instead of higher level keystones that are appropriately challenging for their gear and skill. And that in turn affects who they're willing to invite. AoE damage output is preferred over everything else because the only concern is how quickly you can clear through easy trash packs, and gear requirements tend to outpace what actually drops. What the fuck else is new? They've been doing this since Burning Crusade! Why, how's this different at all? All right, anyway, if you could find upgrades in a Mythic 6, you'll have a hard time finding a group, because Mythic 6 groups, not the other one, are full of players who are capable of clearing +10 and are just looking for an easy 3 chest. So here's what this is not going to change anything, okay? And I use this example on my stream and I want you to understand it, all right? So they're kind of trying to give people another incentive to play with shitty players. So here's why this isn't going to make a difference at all. So if you see somebody in the group finder and one person's 900 item level and the other person's 910, I think basically anybody, unless you know the person or there's some other like external factor going on, like, oh, you need this class or whatever, you're just going to take the guy that's the higher item level. Of course, why wouldn't you? Why would you intentionally lower your chances of success? Obviously, higher item levels doesn't mean the player's better, but I think only a fool would argue that there's not a correlation. And this is the same in real life, right? So imagine if somebody offered you, we'll give you $10 or we'll give you 12. What are you going to do? give you $100 or we'll give you $102. You're still going to go with the $102, even if it's a minor increase. If literally the only difference is which button am I going to click, they're going to click the highest one, right? Would you rather have $1 million or $1 million and another dollar on top of that? You'd obviously have the other dollar on top of that, of course. People are always going to choose the best player. If they think this is going to change elitism and joining groups, and by the way, it's not even elitism because people have their own, I don't know, they have their own freedom to choose who they play with. And if there are so many people that can't find groups, maybe those people should get together and make their own groups. Anyway, so this isn't going to change that at all. With that in mind, here's the changes we're planning to test. This is the good part. You no longer receive additional chests at the end of a run for completing it quickly. When you finish a Mythic Plus dungeon, the chest at the end will contain 2 items and an appropriate amount of artifact power. If you beat the timer, regardless of how quickly, there will be a 3rd item in the chest. Keystones can still upgrade from 2 to 3 steps, so you can quickly get to a difficulty level that's appropriate to you, which is of course irrelevant because why would you want to upgrade Keystones if the loot caps at 10? Now, I'll read the rest of it and then I'll talk about it and we'll go back, alright? Our overall goal with these changes is to incentivize groups to take on dungeons where they know they'll be likely to see upgrades, instead of preferring keys that are far too easy for them. Once Tomb of Sargeras raid is available on Mythic difficulty, we'll also increase the maximum rewards to Mythic Keystone runs to level 15. So this is a completely stupid change and it's not going to fix anything, and I'll explain why. So the first thing that we'll look at here is basically what their goal is to make people do higher level keystones. That's the end goal, is to make people do more keystone, higher level keystone runs. Whenever gear caps at 15, there's no reason to do a 16 to 17 or anything above that. There's no reason to do a 20. It's stupid. Even the artifact power that you get out of it from your box isn't really worth the extra time that you're going to spend doing this other dungeon. It's better to just run a dungeon that you can complete quickly and then run it again for all intents and purposes, assuming that you're playing at the highest gear cap, the highest gear ceiling. So right now, if you're doing plus 10s or plus 15s, the odds are that you can probably do, like I've done a plus 15 with 3 chests right now, and the Sargeras gear, Tomb of Sargeras gear isn't even out yet. So whenever that comes out, people are still only going to want to do level 15 dungeons. And I can guarantee you this is what's going to happen if they don't change this, is that people are going to run out their keys. They're going to basically start the key, then zone out, then reset the instance and start the key again to lower their keys back down to 15, because there's going to be no reason to actually do a key above 15 because there's no sense of gear reward. Now, this is something that you see right now anyway, and I think that just removing more gear out of Mythic Plus dungeons isn't going to make it any better. Ultimately, what this does is it cuts the amount of loot that you can get potentially out of a Mythic Plus dungeon in half. So before, if you 3-chested a dungeon, you would have 6 total pieces of loot because each chest had 2 items in it. So now you still do get an extra piece of loot whenever you complete the dungeon in time, but you only have 1 chest, so there's no more bonus chests at all. That means that you're only going to be getting 3 pieces of loot in a best case scenario. And I think this is a completely bad decision, because the reason people are running Mythic Plus dungeons to get gear, Mythic Plus 10s, is they're trying to get Titan Forged gear. It's not like they're trying to get the baseline of whatever item it is, for the most part, in terms of like the more hardcore players. And everybody else is probably going to be doing the same thing sooner than later, especially whenever Tomb of Sargeras comes out. So what this is going to do is it's just going to make it take literally twice as long to get that gear. And honestly, like having to deal with Titan forging, having to deal with sockets, having to deal with finding random keys and everything like that, the last thing the Mythic Plus system needs is for the rewards to be cut in half. And I understand that WoW is kind of like a theme park game now, I get that. But it's the kind of theme park that you go to it a number of times and you finally find a ride that you really, really like. And then next time you show up, they get rid of the ride. That's basically the way that they've done Legion so far. And they have a very determined and deterministic and a very specific way that Blizzard wants you to play the game, and anything that deviates from that specific way that they want you to play the game will be nerfed to irrelevancy. You saw this already with Nether Shards, and now we're seeing it again with Mythic Plus Dungeons. And those are just the 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. They want people doing and playing the game all in the same way, all at the same rates. And you see that with artifact knowledge, to where it kind of, it makes it to where you can't get too far ahead and you can't fall too far behind unless you're literally not playing the game at all. So I feel like that's the main problem, is that Blizzard is afraid to allow players to play the game in a more free form. They have everything in a very, very specific theme park design, and anything that deviates from that theme park design is completely removed. And I think that the change to the Mythic Plus dungeons that they're making right now is not really going to do anything except for make people less likely to do Mythic Plus dungeons. Also, there's another issue here with carries, right? At this point, there's a reason to play with people with lower level keys and actually help people get their 10 keystone for the week, because there's a lot more reward in doing so. So if you would be willing to sit through a plus 10 dungeon and carry some nub through it for maybe 6 chances of getting your best item, how likely would you be able to do that? How likely would you be to do that if you're only going to get 3 chances? So it's effectively cutting the incentives for doing these things and the Mythic Plus dungeons in general in half. People raid for loot. They do these dungeons for loot. Like, what do you think? People are doing COS the 35th time because it's fun? They're doing it for the fucking ring. They're doing it for the set bonuses. They're doing it also probably because they're bored. But if you cut the rewards in half, I'm assuming that the participation is going to be even more in half. Sorry, not even more in half. That's stupid. It's going to be even more than half. They're going to lose more than half of their participation if these changes go live in this form. Here's what I think they should do. I think they should make it to where if you complete the dungeon, if you do dungeons that are above the baseline gear level, so like if you're doing a dungeon above 10, each level above 10 that you do it gives you 1 extra piece of gear. That's going to actually give people a scaling bonus and a reward for actually doing these higher level keys. Right now, there's no reason to incentivize groups to take on better and stronger dungeons. See, what they're actually doing here is they're just removing the incentive to do the dungeons now. They're not actually adding an incentive. They're taking things away. They're not adding anything. And I think that by just making things shittier, people are going to keep doing something else. And I think a lot of people just aren't going to do anything. People basically run Mythic Plus dungeons over and over and over on like plus 6 as their example, because they want to try and roll the dice for those Titan Forge rewards. Making those rewards harder to obtain is going to make players more discouraged, and a lot of people are just not even going to try. I feel like this change, a lot of times, like, I know this sounds like really dumb, but it feels like these changes are made by people that don't really play the game. They see it from an objective standpoint, and they don't actually play it and interact with the community and see how how these changes evolve and change the community and what the emergent gameplay that comes out of it is. And they just make the changes from a removed perspective. And that's what it seems like with me. These changes make really good sense if you don't look at any of the context of the rest of the game. And Mythic Plus Dungeons have created a lot of content throughout the expansion for a lot of people. And the incentive to participate in that content, if these changes go live, is going to be cut in half. I don't know what they're thinking, but this is the same logic that they've used and the same line of thinking that they've used with Nether Shards. It's like if you don't play the game their way, they're going to nerf it. Everybody's on the same level. Everybody does the same thing in the same way at the same rate. And honestly, guys, that's not really fun for me. I don't think a lot of people that's fun for them. People like to find different ways that they can get ahead, and there's just nothing really to this. And I just feel like all of these changes are made again by people that don't really play the game in a real, in like a heavy facility. They play maybe once or twice, and this seems like a good idea based on a minority. And if you just look at the amount of feedback that they've gotten from anywhere so far, everybody's saying this is a bad idea. There's almost no positive feedback, and if it is, it's either completely downvoted or people have other points that I think are better. So anyway, guys, I think, again, what they should do is if they're going to put these changes live, they need to make it to where if you complete keystones that are above the ceiling of loot that you'd get, so like plus 10 for right now and plus 15 whenever Tomb of Sargeras comes out, if they're going to make these changes go live, they need to also make all the levels, so like if you complete a 16, you get 1 extra piece. You can have 18, you get 3 extra pieces if 15 is the ceiling, right? I think that would be the best idea for them to do this. That way people could get a real tangible reward for completing the dungeons above the ceiling of gear. At this point, it just punishes players and makes things take longer in terms of gearing. I don't really see I don't see any positive to this. It's only making certain things suck, so maybe people do something else. That's my opinion. I'd be curious to hear yours, but as far as I know, basically everybody else is not very happy about this one way or another. So hopefully they'll change. That's my feedback. That's what I think they should do, and that's pretty much all I've got. So thanks for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.